For 30 years, Johnny Carson served as America's evening companion, his warm demeanor and effortless charm creating the illusion that viewers were simply watching friends reunite. That carefully crafted television persona, however, concealed a more discerning and often disappointed observer. Joffo. When the studio lights dimmed and the audience departed, Carson frequently shed his amicable facade, privately confiding in those closest to him about the celebrities who left a profoundly negative impression. Throughout his career, he maintained a mental catalogue of guests he considered not merely difficult, but genuinely disturbing individuals whose public images were masterful deceptions. His ultimate professional composure on camera masked a growing private dismay at the behaviour he witnessed backstage. According to former staff and close associates, Carson's disillusionment peaked in his later years when he became unusually candid about the stars he had secretly despised. These weren't stories of petty diva demands or standard Hollywood ego. These were accounts that painted pictures of cruelty, predation, and profound emptiness hiding behind fame and talent. The most shocking revelations involved a legendary actress whose on-camera vulnerability contrasted violently with backstage tirades so vicious they required security intervention, and a beloved male star caught in a dressing room act so concerning Carson nearly contacted law enforcement. These individuals in Carson's private assessment represented something darker than typical celebrity misbehavior. They were manipulators and abusers, whose true natures were shielded by industry power structures. To understand the depth of Carson's aversion, one must begin with the first name on his private list, a Hollywood icon whose glacial poise masked a chilling interior. Joan Crawford's 1970 Tonight Show appearance presented television audiences with the epitome of golden age glamour, impeccable posture, rehearsed charm, and regal bearing. What viewers perceived as gracious legend, however, was interpreted by Carson and his staff as something profoundly artificial. Multiple accounts from those present describe Crawford as one of the coldest individuals Carson ever interviewed, comparing the experience to conversing with a beautiful, empty statue. The problems began long before airtime, with Crawford submitting exhaustively detailed technical memos dictating everything from studio temperature, a precise 67 degrees, to the angle of her chair. Her arrival 3 hours early with a personal makeup team, despite the show's own award-winning artists, signalled her controlling nature. Yet, the most telling display of character emerged in her hierarchical treatment of people. Witnesses describe Crawford offering near-deferential respect to Carson himself, while simultaneously unleashing a savage verbal attack on a young production assistant who entered her dressing room with requested water. The tirade was reportedly so laced with venom and professional insult that staff in the hallway froze. Carson's producer refused Crawford's demand to fire the assistant, creating a tense undercurrent throughout the taping. Most disturbing to observers was the mechanical precision of Crawford's performance. Every laugh, anecdote, and seemingly spontaneous moment was rehearsed, with her warmth vanishing instantly during commercial breaks into stone-faced silence. Carson later told his sidekick Ed McMahon that he'd interviewed corpses with more personality. Years later, when Christina Crawford's memoir exposed Joan's alleged abusive parenting, Carson reportedly expressed no surprise, having glimpsed the real woman during that single interview. If Crawford's cold calculation unnerved Carson, his next subject represented a different, more intimidating darkness. The application of raw power to bully and threaten. Publicly, Frank Sinatra and Johnny Carson projected mutual respect and friendly rapport during Sinatra's musical and conversational appearances. Behind the scenes, a starkly different dynamic festered. Carson reportedly developed a deep distaste, not for Sinatra's talent, which he respected, but for the singer's treatment of people he considered beneath him. Carson once privately remarked that if Sinatra couldn't sing, he'd have been a mob enforcer, and sometimes seemed to be both. Sinatra's entourage, described by crew as intimidating and non-showbiz types, created a palpable atmosphere of surveillance in the studio. The core incident that cemented Carson's dislike involved a floor manager giving Sinatra a standard 3-minute warning. Sinatra allegedly responded by grabbing the man's tie, pulling him close, and growling that nobody told him when he had 3 minutes. Carson, watching from his office monitor, was so angered, he nearly cancelled the segment. Another layer was Sinatra's unreliability, including last-minute cancellations even when already in the building. The breaking point came when Sinatra made a disparaging comment about a female staff member's appearance during a commercial break. Carson broke protocol, coldly informing Sinatra that such talk about his staff was unacceptable. The resulting tension was severe, and while both remained professional on air, Carson's questions became clipped. Following that appearance, Carson instructed his producers to limit Sinatra to a maximum of once per year, a significant restriction from a host who rarely involved himself in booking. While Sinatra exemplified bullying power, the next problematic guest demonstrated an ego that recognized no boundaries or formats. Orson Welles, with his booming voice and storied career, provided memorable television. But behind the scenes, he operated as if the normal rules of production did not apply to him. Welles routinely dismissed prepared questions from writers as a pedestrian, handing back blank pages and forcing Carson into unstructured interviews with a figure known for lengthy, meandering anecdotes. During one scheduled 7-minute segment in the mid-1970s, Welles ignored all of Carson's subtle time cues and remained on the couch for nearly 25 minutes, forcing the show to bump 2 other guests entirely. His behaviour towards staff was dismissive, often referring to production assistants in the third person while they stood beside him. What particularly irritated Carson was Welles' tendency to treat The Tonight Show as his personal platform, attempting to direct camera angles and introduce unapproved props. After one such appearance, Carson reportedly told McMahon, "A genius doesn't excuse everything." Carson, a perfectionist about television craft, viewed Welles as a cautionary tale of talent consumed by its own sense of entitlement. The next guest presented a different challenge, volatile unpredictability that could turn a conversation into a cross-examination. Bette Davis's appearances showcased her wit, elegance, and treasure trove of Hollywood history. Off camera, however, she revealed an abrasiveness that even Carson found daunting. She was notoriously competitive with other guests, especially younger or female performers, sometimes physically turning away from them on the couch. Backstage demands for whiskey sometimes led to inappropriate remarks, with female staff reporting sexist and racist language shocking for even that era. Carson broke his usual non-confrontational stance when Davis began berating a cue card holder during a rehearsal. He quietly but firmly informed her that on his show, everyone was spoken to with respect. The incident stunned her, but she complied. For Carson, the difficulty was reconciling Davis's undeniable artistic legacy with her harsh treatment of others. After her final appearance, he declared that life was too short to spend it being verbally flogged by Bette Davis, regardless of her Oscars. A different, more uncomfortable pattern emerged with the next guest, behaviour that crossed professional boundaries with younger women. Mickey Rooney's status as a box office king and living linked to Hollywood's past should have made his appearances nostalgic celebrations. Instead, they became notorious among female staff for unwanted touching, suggestive comments, and a disregard for professional limits. Young production assistants would request reassignment when Rooney was booked, citing incidents of him grabbing wrists and asking personal questions while preventing easy exit. Compounding this was Rooney's occasional visible intoxication during tapings, leading to slurred speech and inappropriate anecdotes that forced Carson to awkwardly change topics. Carson, while not a prude, had clear lines about professional conduct and found Rooney's behaviour, which seemed rooted in an outdated Hollywood culture, both embarrassing and unacceptable. After one appearance where Rooney made repeated comments about a young actress also on the show, Carson personally apologised to her, assuring her that was not how professionals acted on his programme. Subsequently, Rooney's bookings were shifted to pre-tape daytime slots rather than live broadcasts. From boundary violations, the next challenge shifted to logistically impossible demands. Zaz Agabar's glamorous, flirtatious persona made her a viewer favourite, but her backstage requirements became legendary among staff. Her rider included a studio temperature of exactly 74 degrees, specific orchids, no carnations, Perrier with exactly 3 ice cubes, her own flown-in lighting technician, and a prohibition on female guests under 40. When these weren't met precisely, she would refuse to leave her dressing room, delaying tapings and disrupting the entire show's flow. One infamous incident involved a shouting match over a missing foundation shade, with Gabor demanding someone be dispatched to Beverly Hills immediately. Carson had to personally intervene to get the show back on schedule. What frustrated Carson most was how Gabor's diver behavior derailed the entire production, affecting other guests and crew. He once sarcastically suggested renaming the show in Hana. Yet, her entertainment value ensured recurring appearances, a testament to the complex calculus of late-night television. The next guest traded calculated demands for passionate unpredictability. Shelley Winters, a two-time Oscar winner, was notoriously volatile, often transforming light interviews into intense political diatribes or deeply personal revelations. Carson described her conversation not as talking, but as talking, but detonating. Her inability to adhere to the show's format meant once she began a monologue, Carson could only wait for her to finish. Her reputation for physical outbursts, famously throwing a drink at Oliver Red on another show, led staff to preemptively remove throwable objects from the set when she was booked. Despite the challenges, Carson maintained a degree of respect for Winters, perceiving her behaviour as stemming from genuine, if misdirected, passion rather than malice. After one appearance where she fervently criticised the Vietnam War, Carson acknowledged that while he wouldn't vacation with her, she at least meant every word. Nevertheless, her bookings dwindled as Carson preferred guests, who complimented, rather than combat, the show's tone. Tone. A more principled rejection arose with the next guest, whose personal politics Carson found personally reprehensible. Jane Russell, the iconic 1940s sex symbol, found herself effectively banned after a few early 1970s appearances due to her extreme conservative views and reported treatment of LGBTQ+ staff. Carson kept his show politically neutral, but Russell allegedly used backstage time to express hardline opinions that crossed into personal attacks. Accounts state she refused service from a gay makeup artist and made derogatory comments about Rock Hudson's sexuality, refusing to be booked on the same episode. Carson, who had many friends in the gay community and valued his staff, was reportedly deeply offended. The final straw came when she made dismissive remarks about civil rights legislation during a commercial break in 1973, comments overheard by crew and relayed to Carson. Her subsequent absence from the guest roster was one of the few clear instances of Carson personally vetoing a major star, underscoring the strength of his objection. The final and perhaps most intense dislike was reserved for a comedian whose philanthropic public image clashed violently with his private demeanour. Jerry Lewis, despite his telethon heroics and comic genius, reportedly earned a special place on Carson's blacklist for being demeaning and egotistical. Unlike others who targeted underlings, Lewis showed disrespect to Carson himself, talking over him, hijacking segments, and once even adjusting Carson's tie without permission, a known violation of the host's personal space. His treatment of crew was worse, refusing to learn names and berating professionals for minor issues like a camera operator's allergy-induced cough during rehearsal. For Carson, the most objectionable part was the stark hypocrisy between Lewis's heartfelt charity persona and his contemptuous treatment of everyday people. After Lewis's final appearance in the early 1980s, Carson simply decreed, "Never again." In a later private remark, Carson called Lewis a truly hateful, a remarkably harsh assessment from the typically reserved host. Johnny Carson's private judgments of these nine figures, Crawford, Sinatra, Wells, Davis, Rooney, Gabber, Winters, Russell, and Lewis, provide an unparalleled window into the reality behind Hollywood's golden age facade. His unique position as America's primary celebrity gatekeeper gave him a front row seat to both the performance and the person behind it. He tolerated eccentricity and ego, standard industry baggage. What he could not abide, and what defined his secret blacklist, was cruelty directed at those with less power, the abuse of status, and the profound hypocrisy that allowed beloved public images to conceal deeply flawed private selves. His assessments, many validated by later historical revelations, suggest he wasn't merely being critical, but perceptively identifying character flaws the industry machinery worked diligently to conceal. In an era before cell phone videos and social media accountability, Carson's quiet observations served as a rare, credible correction to the official narrative. They remind us that the icons of nostalgia were complex, often compromised individuals, and that Johnny Carson's greatest skill may not have been making America laugh, but seeing through the fiction to the unsettling truth underneath.